not, maybe we'll come to think of it as nothing significant. However, if you consider that in not every town are there Vaishnavas with whom to associate, with Prahlada, with Dharmic. Dharmic drove me today from Houston, and so he was saying, imagine living in one of these towns, as we were driving between here and Houston, and how there are no Vaishnavas there. And he was saying it would be very difficult, it would be very austere. And that is the case for many. They live in a town where there are not other Vaishnavas to associate with. We are very fortunate. We can congregate in community and receive each other's support. Another thing is that in some countries, it's not allowed. And so Dharmic was also saying, maybe Dharmic will give the class instead of me. Dharmic was also saying how he was in Shanghai for work. And he thought, let me contact devotees, maybe there's a temple there. So he made inquiries, is there a temple in Shanghai? And came to know that no, there's not. No temple, because it's a communist regime, a communist country. And so certainly there are many devotees, many groups of devotees meeting in Shanghai and Beijing and Guangzhou and all across China. But no temple, because the temple would be a target for the Communist Party, and so devotees don't want to bring attention to themselves. And so they have small gatherings. I visited Beijing some years ago and did programs, and each program was purposefully small. So the meetings were maximum 20 devotees at a time, and each evening, different place, different part of the city, but always the numbers were kept to that maximum because of concern about bringing attention from the Communist Party. In other communist countries, then the devotees have been persecuted. So when I was told, some of you may or may not know, that I wrote a letter to Mikhail Gorbachev, who at the time was the president of the USSR. I had learned that devotees were being persecuted for their chanting, for their having a Bhagavad Gita in their home. If the KGB would search your home and find Japamala, that would be reason enough to arrest you and put you in jail and make some charges, maybe send you to a psychiatric institution because you have anti-social beliefs and practices that are not beneficial to or against the dogma of the state. And so many devotees were persecuted in this way. And I wrote to Gorbachev because I was a child in Gurukul in New Govardhan. We have a nice community in Australia, 1,000 acres near to the Gold Coast. Beautiful mountains and rivers and lakes, and Prabhupada proved that name, New Govardhan. And so I was living in that beautiful community, and I couldn't imagine that any one of these devotees could be taken away and put in jail if we were in the Soviet Union at the time, just for chanting, just for discussing Bhagavad Gita. And so I wrote to express my surprise and dismay and to request the release of those devotees. Later we turned that letter into a song as well, tried to bring attention, the world's attention to the plight of these devotees, and later on the Australian Prime Minister got involved as well to help with their release. So, okay, I've given some examples. I gave examples of rural Texas and communist China and the former communist USSR, but we can take example also from history in India. Vaishnavas were persecuted across India as well for their practice of Sankirtan and Bhagavat Shravan and Archan Seva. Some years ago we visited with Indradula Maharaj Nalkote, so near to Mysore. And that's a place where Ramanuja Acharya stayed for some years after fleeing the persecution of a Hindu king, but Hindu of a different persuasion, and so they had attacked Sri Rangam, and so Ramanuja and his disciples had to flee. And I will give one more example, and that is of Navadvip Dham itself. And that might be the most surprising of all, because Navadvip is the heart of Sankirtan. It is the appearance place of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But 500 years ago, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inaugurated the Sankirtan movement, there was much resistance. It was at the time, Navadvip was under the rule of Muslim administration. Surprisingly, however, the greater opposition came not from the Muslims, but from fellow Hindus who complained about the Sankirtan. So the Muslim ruler, he went to a place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he requested all the people of Navadvip, you gather together in 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s and 8s, and you take mridangas and kartals and you sing Hari Kirtan. And so all across Navadvip town, people were gathering in homes and public places, and they were engaged in Sankirtan. And the Muslim ruler, he came to one of those gatherings. It was the home of Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur was the leader of Vaishnavas in Navadvip area. So he came to the home of the leader. As devotees were engaged in Sankirtan, the ruler, Chand Kazi, took one of the mridangas and smashed it on the ground. The place today is called, as well as Srivasangam, or the house of Srivas, it is also called Kolbanga, the place of the broken mridanga. Chand Kazi said, I'm giving you all a warning. I'm giving you a warning. In the future, if I catch any of you in Navadvip engaged in Sankirtan, I will confiscate all of your property and I will make you into Muslims. How do you make somebody into a Muslim? They had some process at that time, and somehow it was accepted that the Muslim will take some water from their pot and sprinkle it on a Hindu person, then they would be made into a Muslim. I don't know how that works, but at the time it was effective. People accepted it, and the Hindu society also rejected that person. No, you have been contaminated, made into a Muslim. In fact, Subudhi Roy, this is a different story, and we'll come back. Subudhi Roy, he received such treatment. So he went to the Brahmanas at Benares and he said, what should I do? I've been made into a Muslim. They took their water pot and threw it on me. What can I do? And the Brahmanas of Benares, they gave a cure for him. You can say what it was.
Another splash.
Another, oh, okay. Counterbalance. No, not quite. But thank you, nice try.
Take a dip in the Ganges.
Yeah.
Take a dip in the Ganges, alright, yeah. If only it were so easy. Any other thoughts? Is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Yeah. Chant Harinam. We're going to come back to that response. That's a really good response. But it's not what the Brahmins of the Naris told Subhuti Roy. They told him, you must drink boiling ghee. If you drink boiling ghee, you will be sufficiently purified. Now, what might happen if you drunk boiling ghee?
You die.
You die, yeah. So basically that's all the options that's available. You die by, kill yourself by drinking boiling ghee, and then your next life could be elevated somewhere and freed of that affliction. Pretty dire. Okay, so to your response of chant Harinam, Subhuti Roy went to Lord Chaitanya afterwards and said, this is what happened. And I went to the Brahmins of Benares, and that's the response they gave me. What do you say? What's your view on this? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you chant Harinam. You chant Harinam and it will purify you of any affliction, of any situation. And so many verses can be chanted from the Shastra to that effect. So, back to our story from Kolbanga, or the Chandkazi. So, after Chandkazi made this threat, then the people of Navadvip became very afraid to engage in Sankirtan. They went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't worry, you continue doing Harinam. You continue to engage in Sankirtan. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could see that they were afraid. And so after a couple of days he saw Harinam had almost come to a stop in Navadvip. People were too afraid to engage in this Sankirtan. So then he told everybody, tonight you come onto the streets and you bring your instruments and you bring lamps and you bring flags, and we will all do Harinam together in the hundreds and the thousands. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he led this Sankirtan. In one group he had Srivas Thakur leading the Kirtan, and in another group he had Advaita Chandra, Advaita Prabhu leading the Kirtan. And then he was also leading and dancing like a firebrand. He was dancing so with such speed and such movement. It was like a whirling firebrand. And they chanted and danced through every corner of Navadvip. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was really making a point of defiance of this order of the Kazi. He went to every corner of Navadvip with all the people engaged in Kirtan, finally coming to the home of Chandkazi. Chandkazi was very afraid. He stayed inside his palace, and the people were chanting in front of the gate, and Chandkazi was hiding inside. And eventually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the door and said, Kazi, come out and speak with me. And so the Kazi came out, and they had some discussion. They discussed different things, and I will not discuss the detail of their conversation. I'll just go to some concluding points. Where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the Kazi, why did you hide? And the Kazi responded that you were very angry. I could see you were very angry. And so I stayed inside, that your anger will be pacified, and now I have come, when I see that you are less angry. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them another question. He says, but why have you not stopped the Sankirtan? And to this the Kazi responded. He said, I will tell you of some incidences. He says, one incident is this, that after I broke the mridanga and I went home, that night I had a dream, and there was a lion that roared in my dream and pounced on my chest said, "Why have you stopped my Sankirtan?" He says, "This was not an ordinary lion, it was half lion and half man. And he had his claws on my chest. And he said, now I'm giving you a warning. But if you ever obstruct the Sankirtan again, I will not let you off lightly." And the Qazi, he woke up from the stream and he saw that on his chest there were in fact marks of the lion's claws. And he opened his shirt to show Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees the claw marks of Lord Nrsimhadev. Then he told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu some other incidences. He said how after he had made that determination or that threat that no one should engage in Sankirtan, when some people were thus engaged, he sent the soldiers, "Go and arrest them." Those Mohammedan soldiers. And as they went towards the Vaishnavas engaged in Kirtan, Chaitanya reported that their beards caught fire. And so they ran away. And the Qazi told them, "Okay, don't worry. You don't need to try to arrest them anymore. You stay in your homes, out of harm's way. This thing is bigger than us." Then Qazi also told how he told that he had been instigated or put up to this obstruction of the Sankirtan, both by Muslims who were complaining, but also by, he said the Muslims, they came to me and complained, and they said, "This Nimai has become very confident, and he's ordered the people of Navadvip to engage in Kirtan." He said, "People of Navadvip were previously not so bold, but somehow they have become very courageous and invigorated in their practice. And it is by the strength of this Nimai Pandit that they're engaged in this practice." And the Qazi said, "But then I asked them, I said, but okay, that's okay, that they are engaged in Kirtan, but why do you also chant the holy names? Why do you also chant these mantras that Nimai is teaching the people?" And the Qazi replied, they said, the people that were complaining, they replied, they said, "Yeah, sometimes I hear them, they say, Hari Hari. And when I hear that, I also joke and I say, Hari Hari. And then my tongue just wants to say, Hari Hari, or Krishna Krishna, or Mukunda Murari. And so like this, I also end up chanting." And he told a similar story, how my tongue is, that I sometimes joke with them and they say Hari Krishna or Hari Hari, and then I also begin to utter this. The Qazi concluded by saying, "Dear Nimai Pandit, I think that you are Lord Narayan himself, because you have empowered the people with such fervent attachment to chanting, and even other people, Muslim people, are chanting these names, and so I think you are Lord Narayan." Now, listen to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's response. He said, "My dear Chankazi, because you have chanted 3 names, Hari, Krishna and Narayan, you are now freed of all sinful reactions." There's that response again. Because you have chanted these names, what was the Qazi doing? He wasn't chanting, he was telling a story.
He was mocking.
He was recounting some incidences. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is counting that. He's acknowledging it, and he's okay, you chanted the holy name. You are now free of all sins. And the Chankazi started to cry. This big, mean and angry Qazi who was breaking mridangas, now he's crying before Lord Chaitanya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "You are free of all sinful reactions. You have chanted the names Hari, Krishna and Narayana. These names are so powerful that you are now free of all sin. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the Qazi, I want to ask a favor of you. Please make a declaration that Harinam will never be inhibited in your domain, in your jurisdiction. And the Qazi, he stood up and made a proclamation. Henceforward, no one shall obstruct Sankirtan in my kingdom, in the Navadvip area. And he says, I make this determination not just for myself, but for all of my descendants going forward as well. And what happened next is most astonishing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Vaishnavas, they stood up, and in great happiness they started Sankirtan. And who stood up to engage in Sankirtan with them? The Chankazi. The Chankazi, he danced with Gaura Hari, he danced with Nilai Pandit through the streets of Navadvip. Chaitanya, Chankazi, and all the Vaishnavas, and afterwards Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with so much affection for him, he said, now you please go home. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so pleased with this transformation of Chankazi. Now these names that we are chanting, they are so powerful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is accepted. He's accepted Chankazi as a Vaishnava, just on account of his chanting 3 names in conversation. What to speak of us if we take these names with sincerity and recognizing the privilege that we have to congregate like this. Yeah, that's how we started. We said it's not always possible for so many. If you're in an isolated area, not possible. If you're in a country that inhibits or restricts such chanting, such as communist China or former USSR, or so many Muslim countries today as well, where this kind of congregation and chanting is not allowed. So recognize the great gift that you have, that we live in a free country, city, and that there are Vaishnavas with whom we can associate. And then you have this nice facility here as well. We just had a quick tour as we came into Garapur. Ram Vijay Prabhu took us on a little tour of the property before we came into the temple. It's such a nice facility that you have. Don't take it lightly. Don't take it for granted. Be grateful for every moment, for every day, for every chance that you have to associate with Vaishnavas, to come before the Lord. Some of you might wonder, back to our story of the Chankazi. Okay, so he's chanted Hare Krishna and Narayana, and that's being recognized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and counted as his complete purification. But Kazi, he was a religious man. He was chanting other names of God. Why didn't that count? Why was that not recognized by Chaitanya in this conversation? I think that's a good question to ask. And a response that I would give is that according to our Shastras, different names of the Lord have different potency. So our acharyas explain how there are primary names and secondary names of the Lord. Secondary names, they glorify some attribute of the Lord, often in relation to us, that is the material world. And so names like the Creator, or the Great, or the Almighty, or the Maintainer, or the Destroyer, or whatever the case may be, these are secondary names of the Lord. They are quite abstract, and they glorify some aspect or attribute of the Lord in relation to us in the material world. Primary names, on the other hand, they describe Krishna's own personal qualities and attributes, and these are of 2 types. Those that are filled with majesty, names such as Narayana and Trivikrama and so forth. And then there are names, Dwarkadish, and then there are names that are filled with sweetness or madhurya. And these names in particular are very, very powerful in inducing consciousness or memory of Krishna's qualities, his pastimes, his associates, his personal attributes. So when we say Yasoda Nandana, there are qualities there. There is a form. There are pastimes. All of these things are present in that name. There's sweetness. There is madhurya. When we say Gopi Janavalabha or Gopinath or Giridhari, there is such a richness of the Lord's form, qualities, pastimes infused or imbued within that name. And so therefore, we can read from Shastra, Vishnu Sahasranam, for example, says that 1,000 names of Vishnu equal to 3 names of Lord Rama. That is there in the beginning of Vishnu Sahasranam. Beginning or end, or it depends on who's chanting or how they're chanting. So you can chant Vishnu Sahasranam by saying Ram, Ram, Ram. And then in the Brihad Naradiya Purana, the Brahmanda Purana, says that one name of Krishna is worth 3,000 names of Vishnu, or 3 names of Ram. So like this, different names have different potency or different power. They're all transcendental. The name of the Lord is all transcendental. But how much of his potency he's investing in his different names is various. And so, therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving Kazi the credit for chanting these names, Hari, Krishna, and Narayana, even though he may have chanted other names previously. Okay, so we're going to sing Hari, Krishna, and Rama. Let us chant from the heart with a prayerful attitude and with gratitude. Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nikidamine Namaste Saraswati Gaurani Prachayate Nirvishesha Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Srivasai Gauravarinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Madhavai Charanara Vindaratunam Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhaktivinoda Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattacharya Surana Sadhu Swami Prabhupada Ki Prem Sigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasani Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shankar Radha Kundi Govardhan Ki Nanda Devi Ki Gaurani Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Krishna Radha Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Vaibhavi Dham Ki Brajari Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki